been 15 years since the release of the recommendations made by the Banking Enquiry Panel appointed by the Competition Commission. However, some of the 28 recommendations are gathering dust. At the time, National Treasury indicated that some of the recommendations made by the panel, particularly those related to the lowering of penalty fees, can be implemented without delay. One area where there's still a lack of clarity is on penalties imposed on dishonoured debit orders. And this, of course, is a big issue as we look at the economic situation around the country. Let's speak to our very own economics editor, Tshepo, Mongoai, who joins us live now. Tshepo, one, of course, would want us to take a step back before we even talk about why this hasn't been done on what the panel had said, particularly when it comes to failed debit orders.
Well, there were a slew of recommendations that were made on market conduct, interbank arrangements and payment system. But the focus on the main one being market conduct, there was issue that around banking fees. So the Commission actually zoomed into that at various aspects of banking charges, including your ATM, interbanking fees, on us and off us fees. But one issue about failed debit order came out very, very strongly. And what was also very clear was the fact that banks actually relied on it. It was one of the most reliable revenue stream. And the panel actually recommended that there should be a flat fee of R5 that was implemented. And then when asked why they recommended that R5 flat fee, was that they've looked at, for example, Capitec, that was imposing that R5 penalty fees on dishonoured debit orders. Now, subsequent to that, the National Treasury met with major banks in the country in order to find a common ground on these recommendations. Now, what was very clear was that they actually, the banks were left to find so-called innovative ways to implement those recommendations. But even before that, there was issue around the financial sector charter. You could see some of these charges were slightly coming down. But it was later that they started going up again. The banks indicated that at the lower entry of their products, they will impose around 15 Rand. But for the rest of the products, penalty fees remained at around 90 Rand, 150, depending on the product that you are that you've taken out. So it's an issue that have not been really addressed. Now, recently, the Competition Commission received complaints about one of the banks that was imposing very high fees. They approached the Financial Sector Conduct Authority to find out if they cannot, within their slew of regulations, be able to deal with this particular matter. But unfortunately, they indicated that they are still working on it. They are still exploring to see if it's something that can be done.
Still working on it 15 years later?
Well, I think it's not an easy thing for regulators because banks are extremely powerful in the country. And the viability and the sustainability of the banks is linked to the survival of the country. So government would be very cautious in terms of how they deal with the banking sector because of that very important relationship that they have. So one of the issues that came out in that meeting with the National Treasury was that whatever recommendations are considered, they must be in line with the sustainability and the viability of the financial system. So it must not threaten that. Now, I'm sure some of the recommendations, I have no doubt, have been looked at, and the banks were like, no, we're not happy with that. This threatens our sustainability going forward.
Could that be why we're not seeing these recommendations being implemented expeditiously?
It will probably be, But going back, there were some stuff that were done. Remember, it's easier now to switch banks. There are a little bit more transparency that you see in terms of your ATM, your bank charges on your statement. They've tried to make certain language universal across the banking sector. So there are a few things that, I mean, you can actually stop debit orders now if you don't like it or you don't think it's a fair debit order. So there's certain powers, but by and large, there's still a whole lot of things. I mean, one of the issue is when you're using a different ATM, for example, it gives you a warning that you may incur additional cost, but it doesn't tell you how much it is. It should be able to give you that figure so that you are able to decide, but it's only after you have transacted that you'll be able to see how much that money is. And then, there are a whole lot of other issues. But what is very key is that dishonoured debit orders are very important for banks. Then the Competition Commission that was in 2007 indicated that 4 major banks accrued about 1 billion rand from 24 dishonoured transactions, 24 million dishonoured transactions. That's just in that particular year. It's big money, but the banks were not willing to disclose in terms of the breakdown, which bank makes more money and all that. So that information did not come out, but you could get the overall picture that this is big money. And now with the economy being where it is now, and many people really, really struggling, it's going to be worse. And the other issue is financial literacy. They committed on financial literacy. They committed on the so-called universal calculator, the calculator that you can be able to access on a central website and be able to compare that. And we have not seen that coming through. And the issue of financial literacy is very important, especially in a country. I'm going to say something maybe controversial. In a country where financial literacy is so low, people don't understand what they're getting into, and they need protection. And to say that you'll educate them, sometimes it's too late. Now we need to see banks perhaps going to schools and educating kids about what is an overdraft facility, and so that really we can start making a difference. But many of us, they buy cars, they buy houses, they have no idea what they're getting to, and sometimes they pay for things they don't have to. Exactly. Because they don't understand.
And Tshepo, I think as we end up, we've run out of time, but I do think we need a focus on this, because these particular recommendations, as they were made about 15 years ago, a lot of them are quite important, as you say, when it comes to financial literacy. So maybe even a 15 minutes or a 30-minute special just to take people through what they mean for individuals, and you can come on, because really this is something concerning some 15 years later. People still don't know how much it costs to transact in a different bank. That was our economics editor, Tshepo Mongoai.